I'm Morgan St. James. This is Writer's Tricks of the Trade, a show dedicated to sharing writing tips and techniques. Tonight, Eric James Miller and I have a special guest, Jon D'Amore. Jon's the author of The Boss Always Sits in the Back. I've been told to emphasize always. Jon decided to self-publish his book rather than going the route of obtaining an agent and publisher, and he'll share his reasons and how he propelled it into a bestseller.
Okay, well, welcome, Jon.
Thank you.
Let me tell our listeners a little bit about you. As I understand it, by your early 20s, you were traveling cross-country as a session musician, and that's right around the time the incidents that make your book such great reading occurred. I know that. But then while touring during the 70s, you were also a feature writer for New Jersey's third largest newspaper, the Herald News, and you kind of enjoyed the best of both worlds there, right? Playing rock and roll and writing?
Yep.
But then in 1985 you said, okay, goodbye, it's been a slice, music business, and got a job in the corporate world. What kind of job was it?
Well, you know, coming out of the music business around, I think that must have been around 1985 or so, like you said, not really having a college degree. I did do a couple of college courses here and there, but, you know, you come out of the music world and on your resume it literally shows that from the time you were 18 until 32-ish, you were a rock and roller, so you're not really qualified to do anything much. Work in a record store or something, or maybe at the Guitar Center or something like that. But I lucked into a job at that point, and I know it's going to sound crazy. I lucked into a job selling trucks. Not that I knew anything about trucks, but I always had an ability for sales and the ability to speak in front of people, which I guess came from being a musician and being able to stand up in front of people. And like I said, I really didn't know a heck of a lot about trucks. And within 18 months of taking on that job, and believe me, the first 3 or 4 months of that job, I was positive I was going to get fired every day for not selling a thing. But then, like most things, it clicked. And within a year and a half, I became the number one truck salesman for that particular kind of truck that it was in the Northeast region. And I stayed in that industry for a few more years until about 1990. And that's when I got into the payroll-deducted life insurance world with MetLife and Mutual of New York and some other major corporations selling large life insurance programs to groups of 5,000 lives or more. And
yeah, but then in
1990...
Jon, in 1999, you began to write your memoir about an exciting, adventurous, deadly time in your youth when you actually unwittingly became part of a mob scam that changed gambling laws in Nevada forever, and as a matter of fact, everywhere else in America. So now I'm going to ask you to briefly tell us what happened in 1999 that inspired you to go from thinking about it to actually beginning to write.
Well, I had actually known for more than 2 decades that I had this desire and ability to write. And it's just that New Jersey wasn't the place to do it, which was where I had lived and grown up and lived at that point. So in 1999, I drove out to L.A., and I stayed there. And as soon as I got to L.A., I didn't stop writing until the manuscript and the screenplay for The Boss Always Sits in the Back were finished. Having them in hand, it was time to decide, what do I do next? Should I query agents, hope a publisher would snap it up, and then maybe get it published within a few years, or do what many were starting to do at that time and become my own publisher? That's the route I chose, but it certainly didn't happen overnight. After completing the manuscript, I quickly fell into screenwriting as an occupation, and I was contracted by several studios and production companies as a script doctor. This was a great occupation to have until the writer's strike hit several years ago. At that point, I then decided I needed to find another way to supplement my income. So more than a few people who I respected told me to get the manuscript for the boss out and get it published. It was a great story waiting to be told, and I don't have to tell you that America still has a romantic fascination with all good stories about the mob and the mafia.
Yeah, it seems like more and more authors have gone to self-publishing. In fact, some of the big names have also entered the arena, and with that happening, it doesn't have the stigma it used to have. Your book is a great example of good writing and a product that doesn't look self-published. You had contacts in the entertainment business, though, so what made you decide to self-publish?
Well, you hit on two very important details there, Morgan. A lot of people have self-published their books, and many more want to. One thing we all have to do is accept some realities. One may have a great story, but not everyone is a great writer. Conversely, one may be a good writer, but they don't have an entertaining or exciting story to be written. And if you're going to self-publish, not just what's on the pages of the book, but it's the overall quality of the product. And that's the second detail you brought up. I did a lot of research before I had The Boss turned into a book, which I'll go into further into the show. But one of the first things I did before starting the self-publishing process was simply going to the best bookstores around to see the quality of the books in my genre and how they were put together. Sometimes it's the simplest of things to consider that can earn you a lot of money in the end. To touch on your other topics, of my contacts in the entertainment business and why did I decide to self-publish, one is directly connected to the other. Yes, I have a decent number of friends and contacts in the film, music, and literary industries, but there's one fact I found to be true while seeking an agent in the literary field. And I had, because I was in my 50s when I began to think of getting the book published, I had no credibility as an author. The more notable agents and agencies didn't want to take me on because I'd be too hard to sell. There was too great of an unknown factor for them when it came to the quality of my writing. They also want someone they can get a good 20-plus year career out of. With me, it might only be the one book, hardly worth their time and effort. I had hit what the industry calls the gray wall. I was in my 50s and trying to break into a field I should have been in by the time I was in my 20s or at least my early 30s. And I should have already achieved a level of literary success by my 40s.
So did you ever think about giving up on the book?
For most writers, that would have stopped them. But for me, it meant I just had to find a way to go around that wall, to climb it or to go through it. Though many of my entertainment industry friends were helpful in coming out to promote it once I published it, only one, a best-selling author, was able to get me to her agent. Unfortunately, he liked it, and I signed with him, but he was inundated with other writers that already had deals or those whose products were easier to sell. He didn't have the time needed to get the boss into the right hands, so after a year or so, we went our separate ways. But that's the business, and every writer has to learn to accept that. Having a high-profile New York City literary agent doesn't mean you'll get a publishing deal. And it was absolutely a great education and an adventure for me. And it will be for many other authors, I'm sure.
Huh. Well, with so much motivation, but then unexpectedly hitting I think that's a great way to put it. It is an industry term, the gray wall. You armed yourself with a plan to publish yourself. You armed yourself with a plan to self-publish your book. But what inspired the title "The Boss Always Respect"?
See, he's got us both emphasizing it, Eric.
Yeah, he did a great job on that. The title comes from something the boss of North Jersey actually said to an undercover New Jersey State Police detective that was taping the boss when he was asked if he wanted to sit in the front seat of a caddy they were going for a ride in. Because of my years of working in a recording studio, the boss asked if I would analyze the tape to see if any sections of it were edited in any fashion. When I heard him say those words, I knew that would be the title for the book I would eventually write.
Yeah, and it's a great title, John. It really is. It's a grabber. So at this point you decided to self-publish the book once you had it underway. And there are various ways to self-publish. Rather than using a packaging company, I understand you pretty much did it yourself, as I have with the books I've self-published. Based on your experience, could you tell our listeners what hats an author has to wear during and after self-publishing their book if they aren't using a company that holds their hand and does the whole thing?
Exactly. And, even if they do have a company that holds their hand, they still need to know a lot because those companies aren't always looking out for your best interest. But you've asked a great question, Morgan, and I can explain this exact situation when I speak at colleges, schools. I do seminars on creative writing and self-publishing, so I could answer this pretty straightforward. Let me start by saying time and money are your two biggest factors. If you can't dedicate these two things into making and selling your book to be the best it can be, don't do it. As far as time, you must get a calendar and set specific goals for your project over the next 12 months. And that's after your entire manuscript is written and edited to the point of knowing it's ready to go to print. From this point, it'll take at least 4 to 6 months before getting your book printed and in your hands, which you then need to get out to independent bookstores and wholesalers. There are so many first steps that need to take place, but if you're going to do it alone, you need to know these things before printing your book. Every step I discuss after this point is going to cost money, the other big factor. Like any business, you can't make money if you don't have it to spend on your own product. If you cut corners and make a poor or even mediocre quality product, no one is going to want to buy it. Copywriting your book is paramount. Even if you've copyrighted various drafts of it, when you truly believe it needs no more editing, and one should never believe that, copyright the version that will eventually be sent to the printer. How do you do that? It's real simple. Go to libraryofcongress.com. .gov. libraryofcongress.gov and either do it online or download a copyright form and do it the old-fashioned way.
Okay, well then, after you've got it copyrighted, what comes next? Who puts the book together?
Well, then you'll need to find a reputable artist to work on the book's cover. We're not just talking about the front cover, but the back and the spine. And if you're planning on a hardcover version with a dust jacket, you then have 2 inside flats, and it all has to be designed to sell the story inside the book and formatted for print. And none of this happens overnight. You'll be dealing with the artwork for several weeks. I worked with Reflex Graphics, who, as you could see from the cover of the book, did a phenomenal job. They did the artwork and formatting for the hardcover and paperback, plus the cover for the e-books and all the artwork I used for the promotional and marketing pieces. They could be found, if anybody's interested, at reflexgraphics.com, but they don't spell graphics the normal way. It is reflexgraphics.com. Then, at the same time, while all this is going on, you'll need to purchase an ISBN code from Bowker.com, BOWKER.com, for the back of your book. That number is included in the barcode found on every product that's sold in the world, as well as in various references to the book. If you have a hardcover and paperback, a different ISBN is required for each. Nowadays, who doesn't want their book to be an e-book? The number of e-book sales varies from genre to genre, but the point is, the number is high and getting higher every day. While you can use platforms like Kindle Direct and Smashwords, the result isn't the same as using a professional format. There are two main formats, Mobi, or .mobi actually, for Kindles, and EPUB for all the others, which is Nook and iPad, and I believe Kobo even uses them too, if they don't use Mobi.
I think they do too. I'm going to jump in here and recommend a great formatter. I never recommend anybody that I haven't used myself, and this would be for the digital formats. I've used a gentleman named Ted Risk, R-I-S-K, at DelasterDesign.com. That's D like dog, E-L-L-A-S like Sam, T-E-R, design.com. And I've used Ted for several projects. He's quick and he's reasonable, and I'll tell you, his work is first class. So if an author isn't using a packaging company or they don't have a formatter they're already familiar with, I'd highly recommend Ted.
Well, I'll tell you that your listeners are certainly getting an education, and hopefully they're writing all this down. I was fortunate to find Genius Book Services, which can be found simply by going to geniusbookservices.com. They put the boss in all ebook formats, plus formatted the manuscript to be print ready when it was time to give it to the printer. They also worked with the graphic artist regarding the formatting of the covers. Without Genius Book Services, the professional look and quality of my book in every version never would have happened. Now, finding a quality printer was another adventure, as I had certain personal criteria I wanted met. First of all, I wanted my book printed in America. There are a lot of second-party companies that will price your job and promise you anything, but once you sign the contract and give them your check, your books will be printed in Canada, Mexico, or Asia. Most of your money will pay for shoddy work and shipping. I looked for a company I could feel comfortable with, and for a sales rep I could relate to and work with. I let them know from the get-go that I was very new at this and was doing it myself. I found Bang Printing, B-A-N-G, Bang Printing, out of Valencia, California. I went to their printing facility and was given the tour, which included a library of the books they've printed. They proved to me that my book would turn out just like the hundreds of bestsellers already on their shelves. And every step of the way, I was shown proofs that were of the highest quality. I can't recommend their services high enough. They certainly provided a better quality product, and their prices beat any on-demand printing service. On top of that, my book has 12 glossy pages of pictures. There's no other mob book that looks better than The Boss, simply because of Bang Printing's detailed work. You see, if a writer truly wants to self-publish their story and provide the reader with the best and most professional product, these are the things that need to be done and paid for. Their website, of course, is bangprinting.com. Okay, so you've had your book edited to where you think it's ready to be printed, and you've worked with your book formatter on the e-versions and print versions, which means you have to have your copyright and ISBN codes and all other information required for one of the opening pages. Plus, you have your artwork completed to your satisfaction, and it's been formatted correctly, so give it to the printing company. When ordering a run of printed books, you now have about 6 to 8 weeks before they're delivered to you. Now you've got to get your ebooks uploaded to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, iTunes, Kobo.com, Goodreads, and countless other venues that will sell your work. At the same time, you need to contact independent bookstores where they will sell your book and hopefully book you for a reading. It's hard to promote a book to a store without having something to show them. That's where your salesmanship comes in. But if all else fails, you could send them a copy as soon as your books arrive. It's from this point forward that you'll spend countless hours contacting more and more bookstores and libraries to set up readings and to get your book on their shelves. Just remember, though, major chains like Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and others around the country want to deal with you. They deal solely with a small number of wholesalers and distributors, which means dealing with their rules and their percentages. But if you want to play their game and put your books on their shelves, you have no option. As you can see, self-publishing a book and promoting it to where it's profitable is more than a full-time job with an amazing investment of time and money. If the writer is doing it solely as a vanity project to tell their friends and family they've written a book, doing it this way is not for them.
Well, that's totally true. Hey, can I ask you all a question? Is somebody shredding their manuscript that they hated what they wrote today? It sounds like someone is shredding paper in the background.
I'm reading off the computer here.
No, but I know a lot of people that shred their manuscript after they've read it, and it doesn't read the way they hoped it would.
Boy, I hope you edit this out.
That's what it sounded like. I thought one of you guys had a bad writing day and you hated what you wrote.
I've been there, done that.
Me too. Maybe it's just on my end. I hear like shredding paper in the background.
No.
That's our sound. That's our special effects. You see, we are one of those shows.
Right. Okay.
Boy, Eric, I hope you edit all that out.
Well, I don't know. It seemed that shredding sound was under a lot of what you were talking about. But again, maybe it's just on my end that I'm hearing it. Okay, well, let's move forward. When you put together your marketing plan, what was the very first thing that you did?
If you go the offset printing route, once the books are delivered to the writer, who is now a self-publisher, they must then become a warehouse manager, a distributor, and an accountant. At the same time, the writer also has to become a promoter, a publicist, a public speaker, and a personality. Radio and TV shows need to be scheduled. Newspapers, magazines, and literary websites need to be contacted. Reviews and interviews are essential. Setting up a website and a Facebook page for the book are now essential, not to mention maintaining them and keeping them current. From the time I decided to self-publish The Boss Always Sits in the Back to the time I was ready to start shipping out books to the several hundred advanced sales I had from the website, the bookstores I had already made deals with, and the comped copies to the reviewers, the TV producers and such, it took about 5 months. And that's when the real work of selling the books started. About 2 to 3 months before the books were printed, I booked a tour where I knew my book would sell best and I'd consistently be able to draw the best crowds. Since I was living in L.A. when the book was released, I had a pre-release reading at Where Else? at Giovanni's, a well-known Italian restaurant in Woodland Hills. It was standing room only at over 100 people, and I sold 136 copies on the spot. I did this because the bigger independent bookstores in Hollywood and Pasadena attempted to extort money from. Let me rephrase that. I did this because the bigger and independent stores in Hollywood and Pasadena, they would try to extort money from self-publishers, feeling that we were simply out to promote our vanity projects and willing to give up a larger percentage of each book, plus have us pay the store for the privilege of having a reading there. By doing that, they lost out on a large number of sales and customers.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute, John. I had that experience too, and it wasn't even self-published. It was for a small publisher. And I talked to probably the same stores you're referencing, and they wanted a few $100s just for you to be able to come into the store. And I had the same experience in Phoenix.
Pasadena?
Excuse me?
Was it in Los Angeles and Pasadena?
Yep.
It was. Yeah, I don't mind saying it. It's Book Soup and Vroman's. They're both owned by.
Yes, and they're owned by the same person, same company.
And yes, they wanted, and I mean it was horrific. The deal that they wanted me to agree to. They wanted something like $200 or $250, me to pay them. They literally wanted me to pay a $25 unboxing fee to have their person open a box of books and put it on a shelf. And just trying to think. Again, and it would not be a night of myself. I would have to share the night with anywhere from a total of 3 to 5 other authors, not of the same genre.
Yeah, well, I thought it was. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I thought it was a good point to bring up. We don't have a lot of time to discuss it, but
right.
For those listening who haven't been through this, haven't danced the dance, there are a lot of things that as a self-publisher you have to be careful about, because there are many, many people standing there with their hand out and they're just overly happy to take your money.
Absolutely. I called up the booking rep at Vroman's, and I told them that I knew some mob guys in New Jersey who were envious of the way that these bookstores were extorting. And they had I believe the vice president of the company called me back and said that he wanted an apology for calling them extortionists, and I told him in no way was that ever going to happen. And that
no, you said John. I'm sure you probably said something like, "Hey, wait a minute, I'm a Jersey guy. You don't talk to me like that." Anyway, we better get back on track here. We're going to run out of time.
The things I did say to him, I certainly wouldn't say on your show. But anyway, okay.
We'd get bleeped.
But once the book was officially released, I went back to New Jersey, where the characters in the book are from, and where most of the second half of the action takes place, and where I was born and raised and spent 46 years of my life. Thanks to the advanced publicity I did with local newspapers and radio and TV stations, along with Facebook and all the bookstores and libraries that couldn't wait to have me do readings and appearances. From there, I did a tour of the east and west coasts of Florida, another great bastion of mob genre fans, which was great for a book like The Boss. And again, with advanced publicity, bookstores, libraries, and the media ate it up.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. You know, off the top of your head, or more accurately, the hits to your bank account, can you put a dollar amount on what it costs to independently publish, print, and promote your book? I know you chose to have that book printed offset. So
right.
If you could you also include how many copies you had printed? Because I think these are all things that people have to discuss, consider because everybody has a different budget.
Right, exactly. And again, if you're not going to do it to the highest quality, you're only wasting your time and money. But between copywriting the book, getting the ISBN codes, the paying for the artwork, the ebook formatting, the fee for a website, and the cost of having someone make it work and look great. The printing, I had printed 1,000 hardcover copies and 1,000 paperback copies. I even contracted a publicist for 3 months, which I probably didn't really need to do. I purchased some new clothes for the tour because, if you're going to go out there and you're going to be on TV and you're going to be standing up in front of anywhere from 60 to 120 people every night at a reading, you got to look like you're the star. The cost of airfares, shipping copies of the book, hotels, gas, car rentals, food while you're on the road. There's no way to put a cost on the hours that you'll put in, but I'd say the figure is probably somewhere between $15,000 to $20,000, and that was all within the first year.
Boy, further to that, a lot of authors don't have that kind of resources to dedicate to a book. So I've got to ask you, what's your opinion of authors using services like CreateSpace for print on demand and distribution instead of physically having a run printed?
Assuming you have no pictures that require glossy pages, plus if you don't have a place to store your inventory and you want to make less per copy, then go with a print-on-demand situation. I know some authors who have no trouble using them because their needs fit the previously mentioned criteria. Personally, I like having more control over the finished product. But absolutely, if you don't have the money to lay out for printing, if you don't have the glossy pages, if you don't have a basement or a garage, or someplace where you can stock 2 pallets of books, then that would be the way to go.
Yeah, actually, I've used a couple of companies for the books that I've self-published. I mentioned on previous broadcasts that I'm a hybrid author. I'm both traditionally and self-published, and there are a lot of reasons that various of my books are self-published now. In fact, I might even wind up going completely self-published. But I've used Lightning Source and CreateSpace. I don't have glossy pages, and I'm really hand-on when approving proofs. And, that's an important part of it. You talk about the quality, but even if you have the printed books and stuff, if you're not diligent in proofing the book, there are just so many things that slide by. I don't know how those buggers get in there because every time you think you've got it all caught, you find something else. And I know on several of my books, I've gone through multiple proofs, and you think you've caught everything, and all of a sudden, God darn if one doesn't sneak in. But, the thing is, I have received the quality that does not look self-published. People are always surprised to know that my books are self-published, and of course I don't, emphasize the fact that they're print on demand. But for me, with several books in publication, I've now got 14 books, and the fact is that they handle the distribution, and that's a real plus for me. And in that regard, for me personally, it actually is worth making less money per book, because I am relieved of the responsibility for trying to manage the distribution on 14 books. So I think a person has to decide which route is the best for their time and their pocketbook, but still bear in mind that the quality has to and can be there. And by the way, I found CreateSpace a lot easier to deal with than Lightning Source.
There you go.
Yeah, that was my experience too recently. But let's get deeper into the nitty-gritty. You've been very successful in promoting your book, John. If you had to boil it down to let's say 5 must-do tips for authors, and this will be our lead line for the radio show. 5 must-do tips for authors. Whether self-published or not, in your opinion, what are the things authors need to do to get the most bang for their buck?
Well, Eric, in my opinion, I'd say these are the essential things. 1, if you want your book to get the respect equal to those selling on the shelves, don't skimp. Make it the best it can be, from having it professionally edited, having eye-catching artwork, right down to the quality of paper your story is printed on, simply so the reader feels they've made a good investment in buying your book. Number 2, listen to the advice of others that have done what you want to do. Number 3, there are countless ways to achieve the same goal. What works for one person may not work for the next, so use your talents and skills to set you and your book apart. What is this, 4? Let's see. Dedicate your life toward making the book as visible to the masses as possible. I thought I was only going to be involved with my book for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months. A couple of days ago was the 3rd anniversary of my book.
Welcome to the crowd.
And I'm still doing it. And last, the 5th one, don't take the advice of your close friends or family. They love you. They're going to tell you whatever you do is fantastic. Take criticism well and make sure those who don't know you like your story before investing your time and money into it. If the author doesn't have these skills and abilities, they may need to allocate an additional budget to hire people to help them.
And I think that's key, and knowing what you excel at and knowing where your needs are part of that business evaluation you make when you decide that you're going to become a writer, because even traditionally published writers encounter a lot of those same expenses you talked about, John: travel, clothes, hotels. I mean, just because you're with Penguin or St. Martin's or something like that, lots of times they want you to do a book tour, but they're only putting up 50% of the expenses, and that's for successful authors.
Right.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's really dive in here. Let's talk a little more numbers, because I think that's something that our listeners could really benefit from. You mentioned professional editing, and this is a big bugaboo of mine. I really agree with you. What do you think is a reasonable cost range to have, let's say, a 90,000-word manuscript edited?
That's an interesting question, and I could tell you that based on my, as Morgan mentioned earlier, I have friends in the entertainment and literary field and stuff. Of course, doing it, I wanted the best I could get, but of course if I could, and I know I said don't skimp, but if you have somebody who is a professional editor and they owe you a couple of favors, call in your favors. And in my case, that's what I did. I have a friend who worked at Random House, and I made sure that she read the book and checked it over for every typo. Should it have been a comma and not a semicolon, and all of that. And then I had 2 other English lit teachers, college English lit professors, that I also gave the manuscript to, because I wasn't looking for anyone to tell me to change my story. I knew what my story needed to be. I knew my arcs were all hitting the right places and so on and so forth, but I just needed to make sure that what was going to go to the printer was perfect. So it really was put into the hands of 3 different people, and that's how and they were all professional editors. And And that's how I did it. Now, a 90,000-word manuscript, I've also been asked to edit things for various people, and realistically, 90,000 words would probably cost between $2,000 to $3,000.
And that's probably right in the ballpark, John. You know, another thing people can do is they can look online for the recommended guidelines for editing fiction and for editing nonfiction, and go to a couple of different websites and then do a consensus of opinion on what they're saying, and somewhere in the middle will probably be your right answer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I think people should prepare, just like any business venture. There are upfront costs if you want to do it right. So, all right, we talked about editing. What about a reasonable cost range to have a cover and back cover and spine artwork put together? Not so much on the offset printing that you did with the hard copy, because I think that's a little bit that's a little specialized because you have those glossy pages. But just a basic cover.
The covers, because I had, like I said, I had it in paperback and hardcover, and then of course, with the hardcover, it's the dust jacket with the inside flaps, and then also the ebook version, which is just the front cover anyway. So this cost would vary because not everybody's going to do a paperback and a hardcover. And some people, if they do a hardcover, it's the artwork literally is on the cover and, on the cover itself and not a dust jacket. So these prices, and then I know a lot of people, I was not one of them, I believe, who drive artists insane. They give an idea, or the artist comes up with an idea, and then the person who wrote the book all of a sudden now is the art director, and they want to make it. So you have to remember that it is the artwork on the cover of the book that is going to make it's the first line of purchase. It is what the person will pick up because your cover looks cool. Simple as that.
Right.
It's
I was just going to say there's another consideration.
Say that again.
I'm talking over everybody. That's my bugaboo.
Okay. What were you saying, Morgan?
But there is an important consideration in today's online market. And even if it is a print book, a lot of people are going to find it online. So one of the big considerations with a cover is that when it gets reduced to thumbnail size, it still jumps off the page and it's readable. And there are so many covers that you will see on sites like Amazon where they might have looked great full size, and you get them down into the thumbnail and you can hardly read them, or they're muddy looking, or you can't see what the title is. And that's a really important consideration, regardless of what price you pay for it, whether it's $100 or $1,000. That cover artist has to know that cover is your sales item.
Absolutely. And I would say my cost, and again, like I said, hardcover and paperback and stuff, it came to just under about $2,000.
Wow. Well, what's your opinion about allocating money and spending money on entering your book or your manuscript into contests and getting reviews, for example, a Kirkus review in advance? And if so, should all that be done up front, do you think? Or can it kind of be spread out over the first 6 months or a year?
The logical thing to do would to get it to them prior, if you can. I also understand now, I didn't go through that. I sort of let the book run by itself because, like I said, going back to New Jersey, I knew, based on what the book was about, I knew that the media in New Jersey and in the New York metropolitan area was going to eat it up. So if you submit it to these other review organizations, what happens? Because they post their reviews. What happens if they give you a bad review?
And you still pay them a couple of $100.
Give them a couple of $100, and now it's out there. I let the book run for itself. The reviews on Amazon are all, I got like a 5-star average. The reviews on Barnes & Noble, I got a 5-star average. I let the people do it. And then, of course, the news, the various news, literary magazines and stuff that got there that were willing to take it on and read it, all gave it, wonderful reviews. I was very fortunate in that. So, but there are people who believe that they do need to get into these contests or pay for their reviews and then hope for the best that the review is good.
Well, I will say one thing about contests is that they do give a book credibility if they're a credible contest. If it's Joe Schmo's contest for floppy covered books, it's not going to do a lot. But like my first book that was published, A Corpse in the Soup, was named Best Mystery Audio Book by USA Book News, and that was a contest, and that was prestigious, and we put it on the cover, and it paid. But like everything else, you need to be discriminating in where you're putting your money out. If you're going to put it somewhere, check and see what kind of results other people who have used it are having. Check their books on Amazon. See what their ranking is. See if people are saying negative things about some of these contests. And we're going to need to speed it up, guys, because we're starting to run out of time.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I have just one more question, but it's a biggie. Marketing is like quantum physics to most authors, and more PR and ad agency companies, they know this, and I've seen it. I'm the president of a local writers group here, a writers organization here in Las Vegas. I've seen this firsthand and heard many authors say it. PR and ad agency companies are coming at them, and they're marketing to aspiring authors. So if an author is shy, God forbid, or prefers to hide in his or her room in front of their computer screen, banging out, their next sequel on their keyboard instead of getting out and, meeting the masses, what, in your opinion, should they expect to pay someone else to do their social media?
I can give you a good number on that. When I was in L.A., I was planning to come back east and wanted to get the book out and so on and so forth. In my budgeting, I contacted a PR company, and I was sold and I'm usually pretty good on this. I was sold a bill of goods, and I was told things were going to be done. And all I could tell you is this. I paid $3,300 for, I believe, 6 weeks' worth of work. And they wanted, probably $4,000 or $3,500, and I got them down to $3,300. Plus, I had to pay for all the postage for all the books that they wanted to send out to the TV shows and the radio shows that they were going to get me on. And for $3,300, I will tell you this. What I got for that was an outstanding press release and one radio show. That's
wow.
It. That's it. That's all they were able to get for me. The problem is, I went into it with them saying, "Oh, well, you're going to help me sell my book." "Oh, absolutely. Your book is great. We're going to do this and that and the other thing." "Okay, great. What kind of guarantee can you give me?" "Oh, we can't give you a guarantee." I says, "Well, how about based on what you're going to do for me, I pay you for every book that you sell through what you're going to do. Because $3,300 literally came to $1.55 for every book that I was having printed. So that meant that whether these people did something for me or not, $1.55 of every book that I had printed was going to go to paying this company, which of course wanted to be paid up front. It was a waste of my money, though. I probably could have had a great press release printed or designed for probably $500. You're absolutely right. These PR companies are looking to dive on people who don't have the ability to do it all themselves. And believe me, when I saw what little this company had done and how easy it was once I got out there to promote my own book, I don't know if you're aware of this, but on a couple of radio shows now, I have been dubbed the king of self-promotion because of what I learned 3 years and 3 months or so ago on going out there and getting and selling your book.
You know what I call that, John? I call it learning in the school of hard knocks.
There you go.
We're really getting pretty close to the end of the show, and I think that the discussion we've had has been really informative, because whether you're newly published or you've been published for a long time, there are still all those things to watch out for and all the things that really work. And I think we've had a great discussion on it. But one of the things I'd like to add, and of course I managed to slide this into almost every program, whatever you do, make sure it's professional quality. Do not put out a product with typos or what I call a loving hands at home cover or poor editing. And that goes for your marketing tools, too. And I've posted this all over the web. Every time I post this on Twitter or on Facebook, people are retweeting it and reposting it because your marketing tools present your book. And if you don't present it in the best possible way in the materials, how good could the book be?
Exactly. You wouldn't buy a car that didn't look like it was made as well as every other car on the market. So don't make your book look like a piece of garbage. I couldn't agree with you more, Morgan.
Yeah, unfortunately, some of those books really have good content, but the presentation makes you feel like it's a second-rate or third-rate product. And, you don't even get into it because you're put off by one woman who used to be the CEO of Stevens Press when it was in business. She told me the thing that'll turn her off the quickest is if she picks up a paperback book and there are typos on the back cover. She said, if I see typos on the back cover, how good can the book be?
Exactly.
Yeah, so we've... Now we're all quiet because we're watching the clock tick.
Okay, we're running out of time here. John, tell the people where they can buy The Boss Always Sits in the Back, and also where they can.
Thank you. As crazy as it may sound, as the first edition run was selling out, I took the printed versions off the internet market, off of Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Suddenly, the prices for used copies of the paperback went from $13. Now they're going for up to $75, and the hardcovers were actually going for up to $250. I know that there's one on Amazon right now that's in perfect. They say it's in perfect condition, and that it's a signed copy, and they're selling it for over $250. But there are still a few hardcovers left, and I'll happily get signed copies for your listeners not for $75, not for $250, but for the original $22 a copy with $5.50 for shipping. All they have to do is write to me at Jon, Jon, there's no H, Jon, Jon, at thebossalwayssitsintheback.com, and let me know they heard about the boss on your show, and I'll reply to them with the link so they can have their own copies in their hot little hands within a week. Now, of course, they can also get ebooks by going to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or iTunes, and that's available for $3.99.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much, Jon. We've gotten so much information, and you're a delight to talk to. And I have to tell you, I really did enjoy reading your book. I mean, it's one of these things that's a mob story with fun, and the experience must have been unbelievable.
It was the greatest time of my life, I'm sure. I know I even said it in the book. It was what I did with those guys in Vegas, and literally, I was just a young kid, and my cousin, my godfather, was the guy who was running it all. I was just happy to be there, and even now, after many of those guys are gone, it was one of the best. It allowed me to have one of the most exciting, adventurous, and memorable times any 22 to 25-year-old kid could have.
Cool.
That's great.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Jon. Just for our listeners, our next show is going to be on May 27th when Benny Griffin is going to be back with us. The topic is going to be characters' professions relative to your story.
Yeah, and before we say goodnight to everybody, I'm going to say that in that show, you might be surprised at some of the things that can be used to use the profession as a vehicle, things that are unexpected. So tune in to the next show, and good night, and God bless.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Take it easy.